One of the most famous and haunting ghost stories from Italy is that of the Grey Lady of the Castello di Montebello, a castle located in the region of Emilia-Romagna. The castle was built in the 14th century and has a long and bloody history, including battles, sieges, and murders. Legend has it that in the 16th century, a beautiful noblewoman named Barbara was married to the lord of the castle. However, her husband was cruel and abusive, and she soon fell in love with a young knight named Hugon. One night, as Hugon and Barbara were secretly meeting in the castle's garden, her husband caught them and had Hugon killed. Barbara was imprisoned in a tower and left to die of starvation. Her ghost is said to still haunt the castle to this day. Many visitors to the castle have reported seeing the ghostly figure of a woman dressed in gray walking the halls and disappearing into the walls. Some have even claimed to feel her icy breath on their necks or hear her mournful cries echoing through the castle. One particularly eerie encounter occurred in the 19th century when a group of soldiers were billeted in the castle. They were awoken in the middle of the night by the sound of a woman weeping, and when they investigated, they found the ghostly figure of the Grey Lady standing at the top of the stairs. Terrified, the soldiers tried to run, but found themselves unable to move. They were held in place by an invisible force until the ghostly figure vanished into thin air. To this day, the Castello di Montebello remains a popular destination for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts, who flock to the castle in search of the Grey Lady and other supernatural phenomena. Despite its dark history and haunting reputation, the castle continues to draw visitors from around the world who are eager to experience its eerie atmosphere and rich cultural heritage. It was a dark and stormy night in a small, isolated village in the mountains. The wind howled through the trees and the rain pounded against the roofs of the houses. Everyone had gone to bed early, seeking refuge from the storm. But one young woman named Maria couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed, listening to the rain and feeling uneasy. As the night wore on, she became convinced as she heard a strange noise outside her window. Cautiously, she got out of bed and went to the window, peering out into the darkness. But she saw nothing except for the rain pouring down and the trees swaying in the wind. Just as she was about to turn away, she saw something move in the shadows. It was a figure, tall and thin, with glowing eyes that seemed to stare right through her. Maria gasped and stumbled back from the window, her heart racing with fear. She knew that she had to warn the other villagers about this mysterious stranger. The next morning, she went to the village square and told everyone what she had seen. But no one believed her. They laughed and told her that she was just imagining things, that it was just a trick of the light. But Maria knew what she had seen, and she was determined to find out the truth. She began to investigate, talking to everyone in the village and gathering information. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. Other villagers had seen the same mysterious figure, and they all reported feeling a sense of dread and foreboding when it appeared. One night, Maria decided to confront the stranger herself. Armed with a lantern and a small knife, she crept out of her house and into the dark, rain-soaked streets. As she walked, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around, but saw no one. She quickened her pace, her heart pounding in her chest. Suddenly, she heard a voice whisper her name. She spun around, but still saw nothing. And then, out of the darkness, the figure appeared. It was tall and thin, with long, bony fingers and eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. Maria gasped and raised her knife, ready to defend herself. But the figure really smiled, revealing a mouth full of sharp teeth. It reached out with its long fingers and touched her forehead. Maria felt a jolt of electricity run through her body, and then everything went dark. The next morning, the villagers found Maria lying in the street, her body twisted and contorted as if she had been struck by lightning. She was dead, and no one knew what had happened to her. To this day, the villagers tell stories of a mysterious figure that haunts their village, warning people to stay indoors on stormy nights and never to venture out alone. And they say that if you listen closely, you can still hear Maria's ghostly screams echoing through the mountains. In the early 20th century, The SS Watertown was a steamship that sailed between New York and San Francisco. One of the crew members, named James Courtney, died during a routine maintenance task and was buried at sea off the coast of Mexico. But that was not the end of James Courtney's story. The ship continued to sail, but strange things began to happen. Crew members reported seeing the ghostly figure of a man floating alongside the ship, staring at them with empty eyes. But it wasn't just the crew who saw the ghost of James Courtney. In 1924, 2 sailors were sent to clean the ship's number 4 hold. As they worked, they suddenly smelled a foul odor and heard a strange rustling noise. To their horror, they saw the ghostly figure of James Courtney materialize in front of them, his body floating in midair. The figure was surrounded by a cloud of mist and seemed to be reaching out to them. The sailors were so frightened that they fled the hold and ran to tell the captain. But when they returned, James Courtney's ghost was gone. But the ghostly sightings continued. In 1927, the SS Watertown was sailing off the coast of Baja, California, when crew members once again saw the ghostly figure of James Courtney floating alongside the ship. This time, the captain ordered that photographs be taken of the ghostly figure, and sure enough, the pictures showed a white, misty shape that looked like a human figure. The photographs were widely circulated and became famous around the world. They are still considered some of the most convincing evidence of ghostly activity ever captured. To this day, people continue to report sightings of James Courtney's ghost, both on the SS Watertown and on other ships that sail the same route. Some believe that his spirit is trapped in a perpetual cycle of haunting, unable to rest until he is properly buried on land. Whether or not you believe in ghosts, the story of James Courtney and the SS Watertown remains one of the most compelling and mysterious ghost stories in history. In 1949, a group of experienced hikers set out on a trek in the Ural Mountains of Russia. The group, led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, consisted of 8 men and 2 women, all of whom were experienced outdoorsmen and women. Their goal was to reach the summit of Otorten Mountain, a challenging trek that would take them through some of the most rugged terrain in the area. They planned to spend several days on the mountain before returning to their homes in Sverdlovsk. But something went horribly wrong. The hikers never returned from their trek, and when a search party was sent out to find them, they discovered a scene of horror that defied explanation. The hikers' tent, which had been pitched on the side of the mountain, had been torn open from the inside. The hikers' belongings, including their warm clothing and shoes, were still inside the tent. Outside the tent, footprints were found leading down a mountain toward a nearby forest. But the footprints were strange. They did not appear to belong to any recognizable animal or human. The search party followed the footprints into the forest and eventually found the first of the hikers' bodies. It was that of Yuri Doroshenko, lying on his back with his hands held up to protect his face. Further up the mountain, the search party found the bodies of 2 more hikers, Igor Dyatlov and Zinaida Kolmogorova. Both of them appeared to have died from hypothermia, but their clothing was torn and they had suffered other injuries as well. As the search continued, the bodies of the remaining hikers were discovered, each one in a different state of undress and with varying injuries. One hiker, Rustem Slobodin, had a fractured skull, while another, Ludmila Dubinina, had a missing tongue. The cause of the hikers' deaths remains a mystery to this day. Some theories suggest that they were killed by an avalanche or hypothermia, while others speculate that they were attacked by a wild animal or even a group of humans. But the strange and eerie details of the case continue to fascinate and terrify people to this day. The inexplicable footprints, the torn tent, and the injuries sustained by the hikers all add up to one of the most chilling and unsettling stories of survival and terror in the wilderness.